Okay. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us tonight. We're just waiting for a few people to come in, and then we'll get started in a minute. Okay, the numbers are pretty steady, so we'll make a start. Thanks for joining us tonight. If you're here for our frequently asked questions session and our question answer session about our new waste and recycling system for Yarra Ranges, you're in the right place. My name is Lisa, and together with us tonight we have Graham, Amanda and Philippa, and we're all part of the resource recovery team at Yarra Ranges Council. We'll be answering your questions that you have tonight about the new system, and we also have some answers to frequently asked questions that have either been submitted to us previously or that we've been asked very commonly over the last weeks and months. So we'll start off with the pre-prepared questions, and then if people have other questions during the night, you can add those to the question and answer tab that you'll see on your screen. If you hover your mouse, a little panel should come up with a question and answer button, and you can type your question into there. If you could please keep your questions short so that we can make sure we can get through as many as possible. If possible, please keep them under 30 words so that we can get through them without too much confusion. So we'll go through those, and hopefully we can share a lot of information with you tonight. Okay, to start us off tonight, a lot of what we'll be talking about is caring for the places that we love. So I wanted to start off by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land where I'm presenting from, and where many of you would be viewing from tonight, and that's the people of the Wurundjeri from the Kulin Nation, and we want to acknowledge their elders, past, present and emerging. And many of you might also be viewing from Bunurong country as well. And we acknowledge that they've had a close association with this land and cared for it deeply over the last tens of thousands of years. So we acknowledge them, and we take inspiration for how they cared for the environment. And a lot of what we're talking about tonight will be ways that we can care for our environment as well. A lot of what we're talking about is obviously some really significant changes to the services that we provide from council, and a lot of those changes are aiming to improve our environment and future for generations to come, even beyond those who've already been born. We're going to be looking at changes that are happening both nationwide and statewide. So the changes that are happening in Yarra Ranges are happening around all of Victoria over the coming years. And they've also happened successfully in a number of other councils over many years. So particularly over the last 10 years, a number of councils have gone before us in making these changes and have seen a lot of success in those changes happening in their municipalities. We know through information that we've received from them, and also information that we've heard from other residents from within Yarra Ranges, that change can be difficult, stressful and challenging for a lot of people, but our team is here to support everyone through the change. So please take the opportunity to ask questions. and our customer service team is also available ongoing to support you through these changes as well. It'll take time for these changes to become everyday life for all of us, but as has happened in a lot of other councils, they will become everyday life. And eventually, just like recycling has done over the last 30 years, it'll be something that will become second nature for all of us. So the timeline for changes, sorry, gone too far forward. The timeline for the changes that will be happening. So at the moment, we're finishing off the delivery of the FOGO bins and the kitchen caddies. So there's still a few FOGO bins for people who didn't already have those that are being delivered, and that will be completed by Friday, the 15th of September. The delivery of kitchen caddies to properties that already had a green waste bin will be happening during September and will be completed by the 29th of September. And those caddies will be delivered to the area of your letterbox at the front of your property. So that'll be for all of the properties who already have a green waste bin will just receive the caddy, and then their green waste bin will change over to become a FOGO bin from the 2nd of October. And then the 2nd of October is when the new FOGO service starts, as well as the other changes to our collections. So food waste from the 2nd of October can go into your FOGO bin. The FOGO bins will be collected weekly. Recycling bins will be collected fortnightly on the same day as when they currently are. And the rubbish bins will go to a fortnightly collection on the week that alternates to your recycling bin. So one week you'll have your FOGO bin and your recycling bin go out, and the next week your FOGO bin and your rubbish bin will go out, and then back to FOGO and recycling, FOGO and rubbish. So one of the questions that we have been asked a lot over the last weeks has been, why can't I opt out of the FOGO service? So the FOGO service changes the service that council will provide from a 2-bin service for everyone. So previously everyone had a recycling and a rubbish bin, and that will change to everyone having a 3-bin service. So recycling, rubbish and FOGO. That will be our standard service that councils around Victoria will be required to provide under the state legislation. So the Circular Economy Act says that all councils need to provide this service. And so we're acting in accordance with that legislation to provide this service to all properties. So one of the other reasons that we we are not providing the opt-out for FOGO is that it also reduces the effectiveness of us making the change to reduce our waste reduction and meet waste reduction targets at a statewide level. And it also makes the service more expensive for everybody if we provide a FOGO opt-out option. So at present, the cost for the FOGO service and for all of our bin services is shared amongst all residents. Once we provide an opt-out of that service, the service becomes more expensive for those who actually don't opt out of the service, and changes those costs for a broad range of people. Administration of the opt-out is also really expensive and will make overall services more expensive for all residents. So there's the 4 key reasons why we're not providing the FOGO opt-out: the legislative requirement, the effect that it has on our ability to reduce our waste generation, and the 2 financial implications. So the impact on the cost of providing the service and also the cost of administering an opt-out. Another question we've been asked about is, what if I live on a rural property or already compost my food waste? And often people who live on the rural properties are also composting their food waste. Some people composting their food waste do live in our urban areas as well. But if you do already compost, please keep going. It's a fantastic thing to do. and we encourage people to keep doing what they're already doing. There will be other uses that you can make out of your FOGO bin. It will be useful for items that commonly attract pests to composting systems. So things like meat, bones and bread, a lot of people choose not to compost those because they will attract things like rats and mice. And there's also things like excess citrus. So if you have lemon, mandarin trees, any of those citrus plants that if you add those in excess to your compost, it can then affect the pH of your compost, making it more acidic. And so those items can all be added to your FOGO bin as well. The use of your FOGO bin, so it can be used for environmental and noxious weeds. So with the hot composting process that is used to process the FOGO materials, that'll actually kill off any of the seeds of environmental or noxious weeds. There's also a range of plants that are really difficult to compost as well. So things like agapanthus, really difficult to compost, expensive to get rid of at the transfer station. So those plants will be able to go into your FOGO bin as well. The use of the FOGO bin is also really important and will be for many people for reducing burning off before fire season, and you'll be able to use the FOGO bin year round for that purpose. So that will contribute considerably to improving local air quality. By composting the material instead of burning it wherever possible, we'll also be able to return the carbon back to the soil rather than putting it into the atmosphere. So when you're burning off your green waste, there's carbon material in those plants that actually goes up into the atmosphere and contributes to climate change. And so by putting it into the FOGO bins, we can actually make sure that that carbon is returned to the soil instead, with great environmental impacts. We acknowledge, though, that the green waste bins may not be able to address all of your needs for your preparations for bushfire season, but it should be able to help to minimise the amount of burning that you will need to do over the year, and particularly if you use it on the weekly basis. We've been asked a lot about what's included in the waste charges. So most of you would have received your rates notices by now and seen the waste charges on your rates notice. So that particular waste charge on your rates notice will include your rubbish collection, recycling and FOGO collections, hard rubbish collections, bundled branches, the provision of street and park litter bins, so the bins that we see when we're out and about at local parks or walking around our towns. It's also, it contributes towards the cost of managing our closed landfill sites. So there's a number of former landfill or tip sites in Yarra Ranges, and those sites need to be managed on an ongoing basis for decades. And so there's a cost involved with that. It also goes towards waste education activities and also administration of the waste service. So there's no profit to council for actually running these services. The waste charge is entirely to recover the cost of providing that service to the community. If you didn't have a green waste bin previously, the increase that you will see in your waste charge will be $118 at most. And if you did have a green waste bin, the increase that you will see will be $48. And that $48 partly accounts for the fact that that service is becoming weekly. So the increase that you see in that amount in your waste charge is also made up of other things. So particularly the increases in the landfill levy. So the landfill levy has to be paid every time that materials are taken to landfill, and that's charged per tonne. It also covers increases in operational costs for providing the waste collection service, so things like fuel and fleet costs. And then, as I mentioned, the FOGO service delivery is also included in that extra amount that's in your waste charge. Another question we've been asked quite a bit is, why couldn't we pick our own bin sizes prior to the rollout happening? One of the things that has been significant in organising this new system is around the logistics. When the contract for waste collections was awarded, there was a really short time frame between awarding the contract and then ordering the bins that were required from the provider. And because of those short time frames, the best option was to provide set types of, or set sizes of bins to particular properties, and then wait until after the service was actually rolled out to make any adjustments. And that was to make sure that everyone received some bins before the service would actually begin. So each of the single dwelling properties, so where there's one dwelling on a title, receives a 240 litre bin to start off with, and properties that had multiple dwellings on the titles were received a 120 litre FOGO bin. You will be able to change the size of your FOGO bin to a different size if that would suit your household better. And you can call 1300 368 333, which is our customer service number at council, and you can request to change the sizes of your bins. And with the changes that we've made to the waste collection system, you can now choose any of the sizes that are available of each of the bins. Previously, you weren't able to do that. So that's a change that we've made based on feedback that we received over the last couple of years. So with the rubbish bins, you can select either an 80 or a 120 litre. That was existing before the changes, but you can pick whichever suits your household best. You can choose between a 120 litre or a 240 litre FOGO bin. And in recycling, you can choose either a 120 litre or a 240 litre bin. So depending on which suits your needs best, you can give us a call and request the changes to your service. We've also been asked, what are the environmental costs of the new FOGO service? So the bins and the caddies are all Australian made. So they're all made in Adelaide by a company called Maztec. The old rubbish bin lids, that should say lids there. The old rubbish bin lids were recycled. So when we removed the green lids off rubbish bins, they were taken back to Maztec for recycling. And the new FOGO bins and the caddies have recycled content, so recycled plastic within them of around 60%. So there's quite a bit of material in there that's coming back from old bins into the new ones. One of the other things that is interesting to know about the FOGO service is that it contributes significantly to savings in greenhouse gas emissions. So the collection, transport and processing of FOGO waste into compost creates 25 times less greenhouse gas emissions than when we send the same amount of organic material to landfill. So there's significant savings, even when you take into account the trucks coming to your property to collect the contents of your FOGO bins, transporting those to Dandenong South, where BioGrow, our processor, is located, where they do the sorting of the materials. And then they're taken to a facility in Bendigo where they are processed on a larger scale with materials from a range of councils from around Victoria. Even when you take into account the emissions from all of those different elements, there are still significant savings in greenhouse gas emissions. And we've also been asked a lot about the difficulties with fortnightly rubbish collections and what we're able to provide for people that may find fortnightly rubbish collections challenging. So for people with medical or other conditions that create additional waste that can't be helped, Council is conducting a 6-month review that will look into how we can support people with these kind of additional needs. So that will be happening later this year, and we'll be reporting back to Council on the findings of that review. We've heard from a lot of large households and households with children in nappies as well. And we recognise that some households will create more waste than others. But one of the things that we've needed to consider really strongly is that the cost of landfill is increasing and the space that we have available is decreasing. So the current landfill that we take our rubbish to is projected to close, to be full and to close in 2025. So there's a real need to act to reduce our waste. So for that reason, we're encouraging families as much as possible and households, larger households, to reduce their waste wherever they can. And for those who are unable to reduce their waste going into their rubbish bin, there will be additional bins available for $168 a year. So that's around $3.60 a week for an additional bin. But over the coming weeks, if this is an issue for you, we encourage you to have a look at a week's worth of your waste, have a look at the kind of materials that are going into your bin, and then see what opportunities there are to perhaps make different choices around products that you may be purchasing, and where there might be opportunities to choose different products that create less waste, buy in bulk, and potentially reduce the amount that you're placing into your rubbish bin. And also we know that there are some recyclables that are being lost to the rubbish bin as well that could go into our recycling bins. So we encourage people to also make sure that sorting is done really well to potentially make more space in rubbish bins as well. We've also heard from people around concern around odour issues, particularly to do with nappies. And there has been studies done by other councils, particularly in New South Wales, that has shown that smell from nappies, so odour issues, don't increase significantly with fortnightly collection. And this has been reinforced by other councils in Victoria who have already gone towards a fortnightly collection as well. So a few of the things that we suggest to families who are using disposable nappies and dealing with that waste in their rubbish bins is, where possible, to dispose of solid nappy waste into a toilet before then wrapping up the nappy and placing it into the rubbish bin. We encourage removing any of the excess air. If you put your nappy into a nappy bag, removing as much of the excess air from that bag as possible before sealing the nappy bag well. Adding natural deodorizers to your bin, so things like bicarb soda that can help to absorb odours, and also keeping bins in a shaded area where possible, especially over the summer months. There is more information that's available via Council's website. So we have a website that has been developed specifically for the transition to our new service, and that's www.yarraranges.vic.gov.au/whywasted. And that website contains a lot of information that will help with any questions that you have as well. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and we have a few more questions that came through with our registrations for this session tonight that we'll go through, as well as the questions that are added to our Q&A button down the bottom. So Philippa and Graham are going to help as well with answering some of those questions. And the first question that was submitted earlier was, why do we need to use council-provided liners? So the liners for our FOGO caddies. Maybe Philippa?
Certainly. So the liners that council are providing with the caddies, and when you do run out, you can get more from council, either by coming into one of our community links or giving us a call or emailing us, and we can mail them out. Those particular liners are made from cornstarch, so they break down in the composting process. It's really important that when the waste is being sorted at the facility down in Dandenong, that they can tell that those liners are ones that are going to break down. So where they see liners that might be a different colour or a different type, they don't know. They have to remove that contamination very quickly. So they don't know whether they're okay and they're going to break down. And so that makes that sorting process much harder. So if we're using the liners that council's providing, we can be confident that they will break down well in the composting process.
Right. Can I just add to that too, Lisa? They do meet Australian standards, so they meet Australian standards for composting. So we just need to make sure that that's all we use. If you use them, so there is an option that if you want to, if you don't want to use them, you can put a little bit of some newspaper in your caddy and just drop your food in and wrap up your food scraps and put them in the bin that way, or you can tip your food straight into your container and then tip that into your bin straight away without the need for any liner or any paper. So those are the options you can as well. Keep in mind, if you do that and put it in loose, you may need to wipe out your caddy and your bin more regularly.
Yeah. Great, thanks. The next question is, where can I return my FOGO bin to if I don't want to keep it and use it? Philippa, do you have a go on that one?
Yeah, absolutely. So as Lisa's already explained, there is no opt-out option for the FOGO service. So it does stay part of your waste services and your waste charges. If you decide that you actually don't want the bin on the premises, what we would say is you're paying for it. It probably is worthwhile holding on to it and seeing whether you do find some food scraps, some green waste that you can use and put into that bin. If you decide, or if you find that you really aren't using it, you really have no use for it on the premises, you can give us a call and we can organise to collect the bin. Just remembering that the charge won't change, so it won't change your waste service charge, but we can collect the bin and have it taken off site and used for somebody who might use it, or for a new dwelling that comes online.
Thank you. Next question is, can we have more hard waste collections plus the ability to pre-book? Graham, I might hand that one to you.
Council's just awarded a contract for the standard waste collection for our hard waste. When we went through the community consultation for our community waste plan, so the last couple of years we've been going through a process of community consultation. We had quite a large number, I think 7,000 residents responded to a survey, and the response that we got from there was happy with the current service, standard service, and the amount of times we provide it, which is once a year and twice a year with your bundle branches. So that's where we've gone out for tender for. Council have asked us for a further review on that within a couple of years. So we'll review that down the track and determine what the best option is for a best suitable service. Keep in mind, any service, if you increase the number of hard waste collections we have per year, it increases the cost, and it's the same as the on-call service. The on-call service can be more expensive because they've got to run trucks all year round to keep up with that. So, but that will be reviewed down the track in a couple of years' time.
Okay. Next question is from the Q&A tab. Why can't I add tea bags, particularly if no microplastics and no staples are in the bag?
I can answer that one. So not all tea bags have no microplastics. There's a very large range of tea bags these days that have microplastics, and a standard person dipping a tea bag into a cup of hot water won't necessarily know whether that is plastic or whether it's recyclable. The process at the sorting facility, when they're doing sorting, they may not see those, and if they are ones with microplastic in them, it will impact on the end product. So it's easy to say, no, we can't put those in there, because people will just put them in there. They'll see the word tea bag and they'll just drop it in. So we have to be clear that we can't have contamination in the system.
Okay, and just a reminder, if anyone does have questions, you're welcome to add those to the Q&A button at the bottom of the screen for us to answer. The next question, maybe one for you, Philippa. Bin lids were changed on bins in my street, but mine hasn't been changed yet. Do I need to keep leaving it out for the changeover to happen?
All right, so we've got a couple of different answers for that. So some bins, when the contractor came through to change the lids over, they found that the bin had been damaged, or someone had really creative fixes done and bolts put through the handles to hold the lids on. They found they couldn't change those lids, and they have put a sticker onto the bin to let them know those lids couldn't be changed. The other reason they may not have changed them and they may have stickered the bin is there is one design, one type of bin that requires a different lid and needed to be ordered separately, and we don't have the stocks of those yet, but they are on the way. So for either damaged bins that they couldn't replace the lid, or for that particular style of bin, they have put a sticker on to say we couldn't change it now and we'll be back later to change it. If the bin is unusable, so if the handle's completely broken off and the lid is completely broken off, give us a call and we'll make sure that goes onto a priority list and they'll be able to replace the lids more quickly. Those others, they have had to order in some new bins to replace the whole bin. So it may take up to mid-December for those bins to be changed over. You don't need to leave the bin out if it's still usable. You just put it out on your collection day, and when they do come to change it, they'll come on collection day and they'll swap the bin over. The other instance where some lids haven't been changed, it's where the contractor either couldn't find the bin because your address is slightly different to, a driveway might be on a different street to what we've got your address listed as, or the bin wasn't out on that day. Those lids will be changed over gradually. The waste truck drivers will actually carry about 5 lids per round, and they'll gradually change those lids over. Obviously, that may take some time, so it will be over a few months probably for those all to be swapped over. And you don't need to leave your bin out, just keep using it. It won't affect the service at all. The bin will still be emptied regardless of the colour of the lid.
Okay. Another question from previously submitted ones is, which plastics can I recycle in my recycling bin? Graham, did you want to have a go at that one?
Yes. So the plastic market in Australia, or even the world these days, is very limited. So the plastics that we will accept for going into a recycling facility, and that's because that's what the recycling company can recycle. They're codes 1, 2, and 5. So they're the 3 plastics to which we can take. But to make it easier, just to make it a bit simple, so you don't have to look at the bottom of every container. If it is a bottle or a container that is used within your kitchen, your bathroom, or your laundry, it can go into the recycle bin. That is the easiest way to determine. So think of those 3 rooms: kitchen, bathroom, laundry, and if they're bottles that are standard used in there with various things from those rooms, then they're the ones that can be recycled.
Great. Next question is, why can't I put pet poo in my FOGO bin? Philippa, did you want to grab that one?
Absolutely. So we do know that you can compost pet poo, and Lisa might be able to give us a bit more information about that in a minute. However, the FOGO service there's a manual sorting process as part of that. So when the trucks are emptied, it goes into a shredder, shreds the material up a little bit. It goes through a metal detector, and the next step is that we have people who are standing beside a conveyor belt, and they are pulling contamination out of that waste. So we don't want to expose those people to the hazards of bacteria from pet poo. So that's really important, that to keep those people who are doing that incredible job for us, a really, really important job, keep them safe and healthy.
Great. And in terms of composting pet poo, so it can be composted. It can't go into our FOGO bins. However, we can compost it at home if that's something that you'd like to do as an alternative to putting it into the rubbish bin. For pet poo composting, you can use a worm farm or a compost bin, but one of the key things is to make sure that what you're, when you take the material, the completed compost or the worm castings out of that particular worm farm or compost bin, that you only use those end products on ornamental gardens and not on vegetable gardens, because that can cause transmission of animal diseases to people. So it's really important to make sure that you're only using the products on ornamental plants. We do have a compost rebate available through council. So there is a rebate of up to $40 that council can provide for people for residents, either renters or homeowners who purchase composting equipment. And you can find more information about that on the council website. But if you do choose to buy a composting system for composting pet poo, and even things like paper-based kitty litter could go into there as well, then you can get a rebate for that from council. The next question, which is through the Q&A. So if anyone has any other questions, please submit those using the Q&A button on your screen. Do we have an option for soft plastic recycling in our region? Graham, do you have some information on that you can share?
Yeah, not that it's good. There's not a lot a secure market out there for soft plastics at the moment. You may have heard about the Red Cycle, who was doing a lot of that recycling. At this stage, obviously they shut down. The state government is still looking into other options and what's available, but at this stage there isn't much that can be offered, unless anyone else on the panel is aware of something else that's popped up in the last few weeks that I'm not aware of. So unfortunately it needs to go into the rubbish bin for your collection.
Next question, do containers have to be clean before you put them into the recycling? And if so, how clean? Graham, did you want to have a go at that one?
Yeah, look, it's really just take the contents out. I mean, if you can give it a rinse, that's fine, but I don't encourage you to rinse it with clean water. So if you're doing dishes and the like, and you've got your dirty water from the end of doing dishes, assuming you're not using the dishwasher, you can put them in the dishwasher as well. But yeah, you can clean. You don't have to scrub them. The whole process that they go through, there will be a cleaning process, water baths, all that sort of things, particularly plastics. So you don't have to, but we don't want half a Chinese food container put into the bin, because that food is technically a contamination to the process. So if you do what you can, you scrape it out, give it a bit of a rinse, and that should be okay.
Okay. At the moment, that is the last of our questions that have been submitted. And one more has popped up on the Q&A. Lids on or off? The constant question.
It's funny because when I just stopped, sorry, Liz, when I just stopped talking to the other one, I thought I should have mentioned lids, and then that popped up at the same time. So lids on are fine. the recycler has indicated that that's okay, and the process will separate that out as they get shredded, and the different plastics go through different processes. Some of the processes are water bath, some plastics will float, some plastics won't, so they go through that separation. So yes, you can leave your lids on.
Yeah, great. If you do have any final questions, please add them to the Q&A button. One thing that I will mention, particularly for people who don't yet have their caddy for their FOGO bin, those who already have their caddy may have noticed that inside the caddy, you will get a information pack, and that information pack includes a booklet all about each of the different bins and the collections that council provides and how you can use those. So when you receive your caddy, if you don't already have yours, make sure that you open up the lid and have a look inside, and you should have a little envelope in there which will have your new waste and recycling guide, and it'll also be available on our website after the 2nd of October, and that will have information on what can be recycled. There's a really handy A to Z guide that you can use. So there's a whole range of information in there. It talks about what you can put out on your hard rubbish, and also some alternative collections that that you can use as well to dispose of items. So things like the Detox Your Home scheme that you can use to dispose of hazardous materials and chemicals from around your home. There's lots of information in there. So I really encourage everyone to read that, that waste and recycling guide when you receive it in your caddy. A question in the Q&A. Please add your questions if you do have any more before we finish up. But one that's in there at the moment is glass still going into recycling bins?
Yes. So there's no change with that at the moment. You may be aware that the state government has, as part of the new services, indicated that glass is to be introduced as a separate collection with a separate bin. Yarra Ranges Council have opted to hold off on the implementation of the glass bin until about 2025, 2026. And a couple of reasons why we made that decision is because of the state government's container deposit scheme, which was to be introduced this year. That has now been announced to commence on the 1st of November this year. And the reason we wanted to wait for that is because we wanted to identify what the impact will be on the glass services that we would have to provide, because there's a number of glass bottles and stubbies, drink stubbies and those sorts of things that are part of the container deposit scheme. And we wanted to see what the impact was so we can determine what level of service we need to provide. So if you do have glass bottles, continue to put them in your recycle bin at the moment, or alternatively, have a look at the state government's container deposit scheme, because that's commencing on the 1st of November. Have a look and see what eligible containers are as part of that scheme. Things like soft drink cans, small soft drink bottles, those sorts of things are all included. And they've got a 10-cent refund on them. So if you're inclined, you might be able to start separating those for when the system's commenced on the 1st of November. You'll be able to return those for a refund as well. Otherwise, 2025, 2026, we'll be looking at introducing that glass service with an additional bin, which will have a purple lid.
Thanks. If there's no further questions, we might finish up for the night, but we thank everybody for joining us tonight, and also for submitting your questions. We hope that you have been able to get some answers to your questions here tonight. And please remember that if you have any questions in the future, we're all here to help. So please get in touch with our customer service team. And if they're not able to assist you, our team is also able to help. But there's a whole team of people there waiting for your call to help you to adjust to the new service. So thanks everyone for joining us tonight, and we hope you enjoy the rest of your night. Thanks a lot. Bye.